Chapter 14. Joan's eyes widened. We have to go after him. She must have made him text me so we wouldn't get suspicious. Derek sighed, shaking his head. This is like an episode of Scooby-Doo. Fine. You, and you, he pointed to Sadie, Veronica, and Joan. Go rescue Brandon from the witch, who will undoubtedly turn out to be a fat man in a witch costume. The rest of us will remain here, and, dare I dream it, finally formulate a theory about the key and the curse and the removal thereof. Joan rushed out of the lab and back to the house to grab her purse, pulling it over her head to rest in its habitual place on her hip. Then she led Sadie and Veronica to her car and sped toward Brandon's apartment. I really hope she wouldn't have taken him to her house, Joan remarked. I have no idea where she lives. Didn't you say she works in Salem? Veronica asked from the back seat. That's a good hour away. If she lives there, they wouldn't even have been able to get there yet. Lots of people have crazy commutes. She could live in Alexandria, Salem, or anywhere in between, Sadie pointed out. She was scrolling through a list of photos on her phone and finally clicked on one. Here, I found her profile. Wendy Sharp. I was looking for Olson, but I guess Brandon would have figured that out if it was her last name. Says here she does live in Salem. Well, then hopefully she opted for somewhere closer, said Veronica. Her voice had an oddly strained quality to it, and Joan glanced in the mirror to see that she was holding the safety handle over the door with white knuckles, her jaw clenched and her eyes squeezed shut. Do you think we could slow down a little? Joan ran a red light. Are you kidding? Who knows what that crazy witch is doing to Brandon right now? Oh my god, you guys. Sadie's voice sparkled with intensity. What? As Joan careened around a corner a block away from Brandon's place, she peeked over at Sadie, who was staring at the phone with her eyes wide, mouth forming a shocked O. Under relatives. Father, Mark Sharp. Mother, Marion Olson. Mrs. Olson has a profile on here, too. Joan pulled into the parking lot of Brandon's building, hurling the car into a spot and slammed to a stop. Let me see that. She grabbed the phone from Sadie's unresisting hands and clicked on Mrs. Olson's picture. The profile was private, no info available, but the picture showed an older version of the teacher she remembered. And side by side, the resemblance to Wendy was undeniable. Veronica leaned over the seat back to look. But we've searched and searched for her online. Now suddenly she appears? She's getting complacent, Sadie suggested. Maybe she figured after this long no one would be looking for her. Joan shook her head and unbuckled her seatbelt. Let's worry about this once we have Brandon back. They opened their doors and jumped out of the car. Joan ran to Brandon's door, then hesitated, key in hand. Should I open it? What if the noise tips her off? It's on the first floor, Veronica said. Let's start with the window. They crept around the side of the building, navigating saplings, hostas, and other landscaping perils. Joan looked up at the sill. She jumped into the air, but it was too high off the ground for any of them to see in. Why couldn't it ever be easy? Here. Sadie cupped her hands and bent forward, offering them to Veronica. You're tall. Put your foot here. Joan, you do the other foot, and we'll lift her up so she can see. Just like in cheer, Veronica exclaimed. Yeah, except we weren't cheerleaders, Joan pointed out. I was. Sadie and I weren't. We're going to drop you. I trust you. Sadie, still bent with her hands cupped, twisted her neck to narrow her eyes at Joan. Look, do you want to rescue your prince or not? Fine. Joan stooped and cupped her hands, positioning them next to Sadie's. Veronica braced herself on Joan's shoulder, placed her left foot in Sadie's hands, and heaved herself up. Her other foot smacked into Joan's hands, and Joan fought to keep her balance as Veronica straightened her knee and grabbed onto the windowsill to steady herself. Joan wobbled as Veronica peered into the window. She planted her legs firmly and concentrated on keeping her arms stable. What do you see? Sadie hissed. Nothing. It's the bedroom, and there's no one in here. Sadie smirked at Joan. Well, that's something, anyway. I wasn't worried about that. Healthy relationships are built on trust, Joan said through gritted teeth. You think you and Brandon have a healthy relationship? Veronica looked down at them. I have a lot of thoughts on that topic, but I really don't think this is the time. She pointed to the next window over. Is that one his, too? Yeah. Cool, let's slide over. What do you mean, slide over? Joan demanded. You mean you're going to stay up there? Yeah, it's more efficient. Just move in tandem and take it slow. It's easy. Okay, Sadie nodded to Joan. Ready? On 3. Do what on 3? I am in way over my head. Sadie gestured toward the window with her head. Just step to your left on 3. It's not that complicated. You can do quantum physics but not cheerleading? You're blonde and you have big tits. This is what you were designed for. I have average-sized tits. Veronica sighed. Guys, can we just move? I feel like you're overcomplicating it. Just count to 3 and move together and we can check the other window, okay? Joan took a deep breath. Yeah, right, on 3. 1, 2, 3. She took a large step to the left and smacked into Sadie. Veronica gave a little shriek as Joan threw her elbow at the brick wall in front of her to steady herself, regaining her balance. "What the hell, Sadie? Why didn't you move?" Joan demanded. "I did move. I thought we were moving slowly. You took a huge step." "It seemed more efficient to take fewer steps, and that means large ones. We should have talked about that." "Guys," Veronica interrupted, "with the way you're shouting at each other, we might as well have just unlocked the damn door." "Sorry," muttered Joan. "Should we step again?" "On 3, Sadie said. 1, 2, 3. This time Joan took a smaller step, and Veronica shrieked again as her legs splayed. Joan hastily took another step to catch up with Sadie. "What, now we're taking big steps suddenly?" "I thought that's what we were doing." "Well, I thought we were taking smaller ones." "It doesn't matter," said Veronica. "I'm at the window now." She peered in, and I don't see anything. It's the kitchen, and it looks like there's an open floor plan, but I can't see the other side of the room. There's no lights on. I don't think they're here. "Well, crap." Joan pursed her lips. "What do we do now?" "Put me down." "Okay, what do we do?" "Just put me down." "We've never done this before," Sadie said. "Well, I've always been the flyer. I don't know how you put someone down. And there's no room for a flip here, and besides, I'm 35. Okay, said Joan. "On 3, let's just lower our hands." "Right, sure. On 3. 1, 2, 3. Joan began to stoop, bringing her hands down, then realized that Sadie was lowering hers much faster. She adjusted her speed, but it was too late. With one more shriek, Veronica tumbled sideways directly on top of Joan's head, and the two of them pitched over into the thick mulch, knocking loose a cloud of pungent dust, Veronica landing in a straddle across Joan's waist. Sadie rushed to help Veronica up. "Are you guys okay?" "I think so." Joan hauled herself to her feet, checking for any injuries or soreness. "Yeah, I'm good." "Me too," said Veronica, brushing herself off. "So where do we check next?" "Bar?" suggested Sadie. "Yeah." They hurried back to the car, and Joan threw it in reverse as Veronica resumed her crash position. But the bar was just a few minutes away, and they arrived without incident, even finding a parking spot right in front. Joan spotted Branda's Honda parked nearby and pointed it out. "Great, so what's the plan then?" Veronica asked. "Find Brandon," said Joan. "Well, we seem to have done that. What comes after find?" "Rescue Brandon," Sadie said. "How?" "Well, let's just go in and see if he needs rescued. Maybe he's already rescued himself." Joan shook her head. "He would have texted me if he wasn't in danger anymore. He had to know we'd crack his code and come after him." "Okay, so we're just going to barge in there?" Veronica asked. "What if that puts him in further jeopardy?" "Do you have any actual suggestions, or do you just take joy in poking holes in our plans?" Joan demanded. "I guess not." "Fine, let's go." They approached the door, and Sadie opened it a crack, peeking into the bar. "What do you see?" Veronica asked. "Are they in there?" She twisted her head around. "No one's in there." "No one?" "It's 9:30 in the morning. Of course no one's in there." "Why are they even open this early?" Veronica asked. "There's probably a few people back in the lotto room," Sadie said. "Those gamblers are crazy. I don't get it personally. I mean, if you're going to waste—" "Who's working?" interrupted Joan. Sadie peered in again. "Allison. I think I'm freaking her out." She dropped the door handle, letting the door fall closed. "Well, let's go ask if she's seen him." Joan nudged Sadie aside and opened the door wide, striding into the bar and navigating the path between the tables. The perky bartender gave her a big sunny smile. "Hi, Joan. Was that you peeking in a second ago?" She gestured behind her. "That was Sadie. You know Sadie. She's a weirdo. This is Veronica. Have you seen Brandon?" "Oh, Allison twisted her long magenta braid between two fingers and nervously glanced toward the door to the basement. "I don't know how to tell you this, but he went downstairs about 20 minutes ago with an extreme babe who seemed super into him." "Yeah," said Sadie, "and we're here to kick her ass. May we?" She gestured toward the door. "I don't know." Allison hesitated. "Come on," Joan wheedled. "I've been down there dozens of times with Brandon. It's not like we're just random passers-by. Sadie and I are your best customers." "Yeah, all right, but don't tell Jessica." "Never," Sadie promised. They rushed for the basement door, and Joan punched in 4 numbers. "See, I already know the code." They pulled the door open and tiptoed into the stairs, Veronica closing it lightly behind them. Joan put a finger to her lips, and the trio tiptoed down the stairs. They were almost to the bottom when Brandon's voice drifted up to them. Joan put her arm out to hold the others back. "You know that if you do this, I'll never bone you again, right?" Sadie put her lips next to Joan's ear. "He better never bone her again regardless." She choked back a laugh, gesturing wildly for Sadie to shut the hell up. Veronica nudged her and nodded her head toward the right, where the light was coming from. They crept down the last couple of stairs, and Joan cautiously peered around the wall in the relevant direction. The light emanated from the open door of the manager's office, about 12 feet away, beyond a couple of pallets of liquor cases. Joan stepped out of the shelter of the staircase and into the storeroom. Sadie and Veronica followed, the three of them sneaking toward the doorway. They heard no response from Wendy, but Brandon wasn't finished. "Why do you care so much about this curse anyway? How is your life improved by me and a bunch of strangers going blind and dumb?" As they got closer, Joan could hear movement from the room, but Wendy still wasn't talking. She was no Bond villain, apparently. Joan wrinkled her nose. Why did it smell like weed in here? If anyone had been smoking on their break, the manager was going to flip out. Jessica had strict policy about drinking or drugs during shifts. Brandon tried one more time. "How come you weren't in our class if Mrs. Olson was your mom? You're the same age as me, right?" Joan flattened herself against the wall next to the entrance and carefully poked her head around the doorframe, taking in as many details as she could before ducking back out. Brandon was seated on a wooden chair in the middle of the room, his back to the door, and his hands zip-tied behind him. The chair sat smack in the middle of a pentagram drawn with some dark green substance sprinkled on the floor. Wendy stood off to the side, staring intently at a tablet in her hands, even though every instinct told Joan that it should have been a huge leather-bound book chained to a podium. The witch finally answered Brandon, speaking slowly, dreamily, almost absent-mindedly. "I was raised by my dad. I never met my mom until a couple of years ago." "Really? So she abandoned you, huh?" Joan tensed as she heard a slapping sound. She peeked back into the room to see Wendy standing over Brandon, her hand raised as though to hit him again. Sadie, who knew Joan well, grabbed her arm and hauled her back before she could rush in and tackle Wendy. Veronica glided silently toward a corner of the storeroom and gestured to the others to join her. Joan reluctantly complied, allowing Sadie to pull her by the hand, but walking backward to keep an eye on the gaping doorway. As Sadie and Veronica began to whisper, she finally turned and began to pay attention. "She's obviously planning to use him for some kind of ritual. Did you see that pentagram?" murmured Veronica. "We have to stop her and get Brandon out of there. I have a plan." She outlined it for them quickly. It was completely insane, but it was the best they had.